Hello, this is Silver Martin alongside Asingule Eric, and we are going to talk about deep reinforcement and sparse learning from multimodal EEG motion prediction. Yeah. So, first of all, let's start with what EEG is. So, EEG is a technique that is used to measure the electrical activity in the brain using electrodes that are placed onto the subject's scalp. So with this, it captures the brain's electrical pulse. So this is known as the brain waves. So it captures the motion of the brain waves. Yes, so we have the principles of EEG signal acquisition. So this is where we use multiple electrodes placed onto the scalp to collect the data. So understanding the basic principles is also crucial for the accurate interpretation of these signals. Yes, but also the EEG signals have challenges. So the first challenge is that our brain is something that is always processing things. So it's something that is always active, and measuring such activities becomes a bit challenging because even though you are asleep, for the brain is still active. So trying to get the correct data of what you need becomes a challenge. So we are going to see this in the next slides. The way we can outsource this problem and have an approach to the EEG prediction, we can use machine learning techniques. So with this, we have different techniques or different approaches. First of all, we have the logistic regression, which is used for basic emotion predictions that are usually opposite of each other. Let me say happy and sad, something like that. And then we have the K nearest neighbors. So this one is usually used to group particular emotions using the nearest data points closest to each other. So it groups data points that are in a group of sad and puts them in a different cluster from that of happy people, something like that. Then for the support vector machines, these ones are a bit complex and provide more detail when trying to predict these emotions. So the support vector machine uses a hyperplane to distinguish the different emotions. So we have different types. We have the soft and hard planes, where the hard strictly distinguishes the different emotions without any outliers. Then the soft one has prone to outliers. Yes, so according to the different detail that you might need, you therefore come up with an approach. If you need less of detail, you can opt for a logistic regression. But if you're interested in more details, then you can opt for a support vector machine. Yes, then when we go further, we dive into the deep neural networks. So deep neural networks, these are multi-layered networks that learn complex patterns within the EEG data. So these ones are suitable for predicting the subtle differences in the brain activity. So think about the deep neural network as layers of different computational algorithms that allow data to pass through if only if the data reaches a certain criteria. So they have strengths and weaknesses as well. So their strength is that this method is very accurate with emotional classification. You find that it will classify happy, sad, maybe angry or even frustrated, it has a very high accuracy rate. Then it can learn intricate EEG signal features automatically, so it's automated in another way. Then its weaknesses is that it needs a lot of computational power to traverse the different EEG data. Then going to the next slide, we have the recurrent neural networks. So with recurrent neural networks, remember our brain activities are sequential, or the occurrence is over time. It's not like a snapshot of data. It's just like I can express this in analog and digital way. It's like randomly changing at all times. So recurrent neural networks help us to detect even the subtle change in the brainwave activity. And the good thing with them is that they have a memory-like structure where they can memorize data that they have already seen and compare it with the current data. So which usually helps in predicting the outcome of the subject. So we have the advantages is that the RNN's ability to analyze temporal changes in the EEG signals enhances the accuracy in emotion classification. Yes, we've talked about this. And then their application, they can be used definitely in the classification of emotion detection. So with that said, let me call upon Eric to continue from the next slide.
Hello. Continuing with the RNN, I'm going to take about architecture overview. I'll be discussing the architecture of our system, recognizing emotional states from the EEG data, focusing on the use of the RNN networks. Now, the RNN structure, which we'll understand as the building blocks for understanding the emotion, is at the heart of the architecture. I would say imagine a network for interconnected nodes, each playing a role in processing information. Now, unlike the traditional neural networks, RNNs have a unique feature. They process input sequentially, which I think my colleague has already talked about, one piece at a time, as each piece of information, in our case, a segment of EEG data, is fed into the network. RNN updates its internal state. Now, this internal state acts as a memory, allowing the network to retain information of the previous inputs. Then we have what we call the temporal dependencies. Now, emotions in this case are not static. They keep on evolving as time goes on, as maybe per hour, as time the person's mood changes. Now, they change due to intensity and sometimes they change rapidly. So that means they are dynamic in nature. So the sequential processing capability of the RNNs perfectly suited to capture these temporal dependencies. Now, the network here can learn how the brain activity at the moment relates to the next, allowing it to understand not just the snapshot, but the emotional state and how the emotional change can evolve over time. Then we have the model training. Most especially here, we use fine tuning for accuracy. Now, in this case, you'd ask yourself, how do we get RNN to actually recognize emotion? I think this is where the training comes in. We feed the RNN with a large data set of EEG recordings that are labeled, which brings us to the supervised learning. The training involves adjusting the network's internal parameters especially fine-tuning it so that it can accurately predict emotional states based on the EEG input. Go to the next slide. Now here we have the challenges in the EEG data collection. We are going to navigate complexities someone could face or some of which we face. Uh, One, we have collecting data in the EEG, like navigating a complex maze. Now, if you understand this is completely, as we said, we feed the RNN with a large data set. So which means this is a very valuable understanding for the brain activity. So it comes with its own set of challenges. Uh, One, collecting data isn't simple as just placing the electrodes on someone's head. So it requires a deep understanding for someone like a neuroscience science science person or personnel with the required techniques or principles. So in case you're not actually equipped with knowledge, you might actually get it wrong. Then the next challenge we have the process to manage techniques to ensure accurate data. Yes. So data collection requires specialized and often most expensive equipment. It is not just about electrodes. There's a full system that follows up the computers, uh, the screen for the signals, the electrodes, and so many others. We have EEG amplifiers. We have to go through filtering. We have shielding. So all this at once becomes expensive to attain. Then the third one, we have a many such as lack access to EEG facilities and struggle with the complexities of data hindering the development of the robust machine. Yeah, the raw data, e.g., raw data is messy. You can't just feed it in. It's like having a rough book. It needs editing and refinement before it gets ready to be published. Then uh, you can go to noise reduction in EEG. EEG recordings are valuable in order to understand the brain activity. There are and there are noises. So I would put it in a way whereby you have a signal, but that signal comes along with very many hindrances. It could be external, others could be internal. Can give an example of someone blinking. Can give an example of so many things that hinder the signal. So in case we have the noise reduction techniques. For example, we have filtering method. Uh, various filtering techniques are used to remove noise from the EEG signals. Yeah. Uh, EEG signals here contain a mix of different frequencies. Some of these frequencies are relevant to the brain activity, and others are just noise. Filtering techniques here act like sieves. Uh, they're allowing us to isolate the frequencies we're interested in and then blocking the rest. There are types of filters we could be having the band pass filters, then we have the band stop filters, others we have the high pass and low pass filters, which can help us isolate the frequency and the noise. Then we have the artifact removal method. So as the brain also has noise, they also can be what we call the artifacts. These are signals that originate from the outside of the brain. The common artifacts we have like eyes blinking, as I talked about, then muscle movements, sweating. So, and the electrodes themselves here also can act as artifacts. So we need to remove the artifacts to get a clear picture of the brain activity. Now, Now, the reason I why we're removing artifacts here, here artifacts can mimic the real brain activity, leading to misinterpretations of data. Removing them is essential and accurate for motion detection. And we have the signal processing algorithm. So after filtering and then removing the artifacts, the AGG might still need further refinement. So signal processing algorithms here help isolate the relevant components of the signal and reduce any remaining noise. I think we can go to the next slide. We have advantages of EEG. So unlike the rest, ways of emotion detection using facial expression, using tone variation. So EEG offers an advantage over those other methods, making it particularly valuable for research and various applications. Now we have what we call the direct brain activity measurement. Now here, EEG doesn't look at the outward expression, relying on self-reporting. It directly interacts with the electric activity of the brain using sensors in the scalp. Now, the crucial advantage in this case is the emotions originate directly from the brain. So the EEG uses a window into these neural processes. Now, to understand someone's emotions, you cannot solely rely on the expressions or the tone of variation, where some people might say to hide their feelings. So getting it directly from the brain uh, removes the bias. So what you're getting is a pure emotion. Then we have the nuanced understanding, nuanced understanding of emotion. Now this is beyond bias. Now emotions here, as we said, are not simple. They are complex in a way to attain. Uh, EG now helps us to distinguish between these nuances. They can say, well, if someone is happy, AGG could reveal different types of happiness, perhaps relaxed, contentment versus excited, which helps us to differentiate between similar sounding emotions like sadness and disappointment. So this level of detail is invaluable for research, and applications require fine-grained understanding for the emotion states. Then we have the high temporal resolution. This is like tracking emotions in real time. As we said before, emotions change rapidly. So in this case, the AG has excellent temporal resolution, as we named before, meaning that it can capture rapid emotions, brain activity in like a millisecond precision. So real-time tracking here has the ability for understanding dynamics of emotion processing, how emotions unfold, how they fluctuate, interact with each other over time. This is also someone might require immediate feedback, such as the brain computer interfaces for biofeedback system. So, next slide. Then we have the takeaways. We're going to talk about the takeaways and future direction of the AG. Now, AG motion detection is actually a promising field with a significant potential advancement according to what I talked about before. In the healthcare, it can be used in the healthcare, in the human-computer interaction, and various applications. Now, understanding EEG so that could actually mark our end of our presentation.